All right, this is lesson 32.3, the quadratic formula. It is another algebraic method to solve quadratic equations. This is located on page 474 in your Springboard curriculum. All right, learning targets. We're going to derive the quadratic formula and we're going to solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. Generalizing a solution method into a formula provides an efficient way to perform complicated procedures. You can complete the square on the general form of a quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, to find a formula for solving all quadratic equations. So we can take this general form and use completing the square to find a formula that we can use to solve any quadratic equation. All right, so the general form again is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 for a quadratic equation. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to divide everything by a. And that makes my x squared with the coefficient of 1. And then we are going to move our c over a to the other side. So we're going to subtract c over a. So that is how this became x squared plus b over ax equals negative c over a. All right, the next thing we're going to do is complete the square. So we're going to complete the square. We're going to take our x term, our b term, and divide it by 2 and square it. It is kind of hard to divide b over a by 2. So dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. So we're going to do 1/2 times b over a squared. And that is going to give us b over 2a squared. Okay. And we're going to add that to both sides. So that is how they got that. Okay. All right, from here, we're just going to simplify. We're going to factor the left-hand side and simplify the right-hand side. So we're going to factor this to x plus b over 2a times x plus b over 2a, which is the same thing as x plus b over 2a squared. And we're going to simplify this, and we found a common denominator of 4a squared, and this is going to become b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to simplify this. We're going to take the square root of both sides. All right, that makes this square go away, and you're going to be left with x plus b over 2a. And then this is going to be plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. All right, and the next thing we're going to do is solve for x. So we're going to subtract b over 2a from both sides. And that is going to give you x is equal to negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And I went ahead and took the square root of 4a squared and the square root of 4, and the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of a squared is a. And then from there, since they have a common denominator, you can just go ahead and add the numerators. So this is going to become negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a, and that is simplified, and this formula here is called the quadratic formula. All right, so ta-da. All right, so the quadratic formula can be used to solve any quadratic equation. It can be used to solve any quadratic equation, just as long as the quadratic equation is written in standard form. And in standard form, that means where a does not equal 0. So if a equals 0, it's not quadratic. And standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And you can plug in your coefficients of your a and b and the constant c, and that will give you your solutions to any quadratic equation. Remember, your solutions is where it crosses the x-axis, so that will give you your x-intercepts. All right, so to apply the quadratic formula, you are going to make sure the equation is in standard form first. You're going to identify your A, B, and C, which is A is your coefficient of the x squared, B is your coefficient of B, and C is your constant. And then you are going to substitute these values into the quadratic formula. All right, from there, we're going to simplify and determine the exact solution and also the decimal solution. All right, so solve x squared plus 3 equals 6x using the quadratic formula. The first thing you need to do is make sure it's in standard form. So it needs to equal 0. So the easiest thing to move is the 6. So you're going to subtract 6x and subtract 6x. All right, so this is going to become 0 here. And just write this as x squared minus 6x plus 3. Okay. All right, you're going to identify your A, B, and C. Again, your A is your coefficient of x squared. This is understood to be a 1. Your B is going to be -6, and C is going to be 3. After you do that, you just plug it into the formula. The formula is negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC over 2A. And then once you plug it into the formula, you are going to simplify according to the order operation. All right, always starting your grouping symbol. So you're going to simplify underneath the radical first. You do -6 squared, which is 36. You're going to multiply 4 times 1 times 3, which is 12. And then you're going to do 36 minus 12, which is 24. And you can go ahead and multiply 2 times 1, which is 2. You are going to write your two solutions. Remember, you can write it as 6 plus the square root of 24 divided by 2, or 6 minus the square root of 24 divided by 2. Once you get your two solutions, you can put them in your calculator. It can be either your graphing calculator or Desmos and get your decimal values. All right, if you do not have a calculator, you can also write your radicals in simplest radical form, and you can determine all the factors that they have in common and divide those out. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with example 1. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is make sure it is in standard form. So standard form means it needs to equal 0. The easiest thing to move is the 3x squared, so we're going to subtract 3x squared from one side, and we also do it to the other. Whatever you do to one side, you do it to the other. All right, so that is going to give me 0, which we want it to equal 0. And the other side is going to be -3x squared plus 4x. I'm sorry, y'all. My computer is tripping. Plus 3 equals 0. All right, from there we can figure out our A, B, and C. A is going to be -3. B is going to be 4. And C is going to be 3. All right, and then we can go ahead and plug those numbers into the formula. Your formula again is -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So let's plug it in. So it's going to be -4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times -3 times 3. All right, I'm sorry for that looking so sloppy. All over 2 times a, which is -3. All right, so from here, we're going to simplify what's underneath the radical first. So x is going to equal -4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared is 16. And we're going to multiply -4 times -3, which is 12. And 12 times 3 is 36. So this is going to become plus 36. And we can go ahead and multiply the bottom, which is going to be -6. All right, so x is going to equal -4 plus or minus the square root of 52 divided by -6. All right, so to get your answers, you can just go ahead and type that in. You can go to x equals and do -4 plus the square root of 52 divided by -6. And then you can do x equals -4 minus the square root of 52 divided by -6. All right, so we can go ahead and get our decimals. So let's go. I'm going to use decimals. You can use your graphing calculator if you want to. All right, when you are typing this in, make sure you put the top, your numerator in parentheses. So we're going to do -4 plus the square root of 52. Close that parentheses. And then divide by -6. And that's going to be negative 0.54. So x equals -0.54. And I forgot to put the word or, sorry. X equals. And you can go back to Desmos and change that that plus to a minus sign. And that's going to be 1.87. So we can go ahead and write 1.87. All right, so those are your two solutions. Okay, so another thing that you can do also is you can simplify this a little bit more. Sometimes they ask you to simplify the equation a little bit more. So how you will do that is, first of all, we're going to simplify this radical. So the square root of 52 is 4 times 13. So the square root of 4 is 2. So this is going to become 2 radical 13. So we can write this as -4 plus or minus 2 radical 13 divided by -6. All right, if you notice, 4, 2, and 6 all have 2 in common. So we're going to take out a 2 from all of these. So we're going to take out a 2 from all of these. So we're going to factor out a 2. So we're going to factor out, this is going to become 2. 4 divided by 2 is -2, plus or minus. 2 goes into 2 one time, so this is going to be the square root of 13. You don't have to put the 1. And 2 goes into -6 3 times, so this will become 2 over 2 times -3. All right, so this cancels, the 2 over 2 cancel, and you're going to be left with -2 plus or minus the square root of 13 divided by -3. Since both of these are negative, we can actually change that to a positive. So we can go ahead and simplify that to 2 plus or minus the square root of 13 divided by 3. All right, and that is in simplest form. Again, you do not have to do that part. If you can get me my 2 decimal answers, I am perfectly fine with that. Okay. Any questions? All right. That is all you have to do to use the quadratic formula. I will see you on the next lesson.